G'day there, Signets and Swanlings. 2012 Premiership player Nick Smith here. It's my pleasure, as always, to introduce a bevy of bloods, a fan podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club, brought to you by Noddy and Stevo, a pair of red and white tragics. So pop on the kettle and settle in as the boys had an in-depth chat about the Swans' last game, the Swans' next game, and a little bit about footy too. This is Nick Smith signing off until next week's episode. But in the meantime, remember, be good to your bloods and they'll be good to you.
Welcome back to a bevy of bloods. I'm your host, Noddy, and today I'm joined once again by Chris. How you going, mate?
Yeah, good, Noddy. Good to be back, mate. How you doing?
Good stuff. Awesome, mate. In this episode number 33, we're going to be reviewing the Swannies round 4 game. So fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved bloods. Last Saturday afternoon, our Sydney Swans defeated the North Melbourne Kangaroos by 11 points with a final score of 13-8-86 to 12-3-75. All right, mate, first impressions. What did you think of that?
Yeah, look, a better game. It's always good to be in the win column, even though it was against the Kangaroos, who have been lit up a couple of times this season, but taking a few good things out of it. Defensively, we looked a lot better coming out of our half. Moved the ball really well. I felt that there was a lot of good effort from the mids kind of coming back and playing that support role for the defenders to have an out. McInerney coming back in was a big win there to also help out that spot. And look, the fight for the small forwards is massive. Ronk, Bell, Wicks, week in, week out, they all seem to do their job, and it kind of feels like it's going to be a tough call to who's going to stay in, although I think some fans will have a good conversation about which one they feel should be the one to keep in. And I genuinely think that North is a way better team than second last. I think they play pretty decently this week. So, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, same, mate. It was a very close game. Lots of end-to-end football, very fast-paced, high pressure from both teams, which actually forced a lot of mistakes and at times created a hard-to-watch game. But other times there was like high skill and... Yeah, I just think it was obviously a seesawing affair. The lead changed 7 times. And we'll talk about the quarter results in a moment. But from our previous 5 games against the Roos, it had been decided by a margin of 14 or less. So it was always going to be tight. And especially if you think about the ex-Swans coaching, John Blakey, first and foremost. He's part of the Roos setup now, so he was always going to do a pretty good job on us. But other than that, look, I think our younger players stepped up again to get us over the line. You've already mentioned Juzzy. We'll talk about him at length. Ollie Florent, Heaney, Campbell, Warner, Blakey, all these guys had really, really good games. In terms of your key takeaways, mate, what'd you see?
Well, yeah, I do recall us having a conversation last week about the role for Joey, about what we should do with him. And look, 14 contested possessions by Joey being number one on the field last week. And that made a massive difference for sure. It seemed like we were +9 contested possessions throughout the whole game, which is not a blowout at all, which is just, about right where we should be. We should be a bit more than that against most teams. It's kind of our game. But it's definitely a better sign to what we should be doing and get the way that our game plays. And I feel that Joey kind of rolled in and out of that role. So went inside and kind of played on that regular mid side, on the wing rather, played inside and then went out to the wing. So maybe that's kind of the new role where we kind of can share him around. He also did a couple of very tidy field kicks, which is a bit unusual for Joey, considering what we saw the first week. I think we kind of mentioned that that's probably something that was lacking in in a chink in the armor that is the beast Joey. So that was all really good to see. Look, 69 errors. We still have our work cut out. We're still a bit rough under pressure. We're still holding on to the ball the extra too many steps. We're still handballing it to someone that's already under pressure, or that's just what the game is doing, and we're just not being able to find that extra bit of space. I felt in the second half we played a bit better in that way, and we kind of found a little bit more. So we'll see really what that looks like. And yeah, look, in the rucks, I think we're in a bit of a funny spot, aren't we? We've got Laddams, who we had in this week, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Amadi the week before. Obviously, we want to have Hickey. Hickey's out for a little while. I don't know how much longer. We've got Sinclair coming around as well. We've got McLean and Reed that can have a crack at it and have done throughout this season. So a lot of options there, but nothing really screaming out other than maybe a couple that we can talk about. And look, all in all, a good win, right? A win's a win. The teams, the stats looked okay, but the team played a lot better and pulled together pretty well towards the end there.
Yeah, mate. Look, I think, as I mentioned earlier, North and Sydney both won 2 quarters each. More importantly, Swans leading at halftime as well as at full time. North's 2 winning quarters where they were first and third, where they were 100% accurate. They kicked 4 goals and 5 goals respectively in those quarters. Our most accurate quarter was the fourth when it counted, and that was only at 67%. So overall, North were 80% accurate. We were 62%. So, it could have very easily been another game like against the Bulldogs. But otherwise, we won the clearances plus 12, uncontested possessions plus 16. But as you're saying, these aren't massive differences. Everything else was pretty much even. It was really a very close game. There were a lot of free kicks again against us. I didn't go through every free kick like I started to do against the Bulldogs, and I figured this out. When we win, I'm less inclined to do a free kick review.
I think most fans are, to be honest with you, which is kind of the nature of it, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And look, I thought that there were good calls both ways, dubious calls both ways. Like none that really I think screamed out. I think it was more the fact that there were a lot of free kicks, and even Horse mentioned that in the press conference afterwards. Total of 60 free kicks. That's a free kick every 2 minutes. So that's too much whistle blowing. Otherwise, look, like if you think about it overall, we're coming second. We've got 3 wins, 1 loss, sitting in 6th on percentage only. We'd be equal first if we'd pinched that win against the Bulldogs last week. It's still really tricky to read the form of all the teams, but as you've already touched on, if North continue to play like that, it's really hard to see them not making the 8 this year. So, I think we can take something away with that if it ends up playing out like that. Mate, in terms of your favourite moments of the game, what were they, both individual and team?
Yeah, individual, I think the Heat, Heaney, just those last 2 goals by him to really just ice it and just get on top and just finish it off.
Yeah.
That second last one was just an enormous amount of effort to run from the halfback all the way through the centres to kind of have his eye on where the ball was going, understand where the game was being played, and then make sure that he had the extra 2 steps and run in front of his man to get that mark. I mean, pretty insane kick to kind of get it to him, but it was the effort from Heaney to put himself in a position to even have a crack at that. That was just huge by him. And then that last goal where he's running towards the boundary, at almost full pitch, and then just hammers it on the, as it dribbles it through the goal from 55 out to score it. I mean, that is a phenomenal goal.
It was. It was on a crazy tight angle as well.
Insanely tight angle, right? Like 5 meters away from the boundary, 55 out, punches it through. That's crazy. Any other week, the AFL would normally be going gaga over this, but of course it's Sydney, so they don't really care that much about it. And of course, there was that ridiculous goal by Richmond. That's probably going to be the goal of the year, or high up there in contention. So anyway, but yeah, Heaney's 2 last goals, massive stuff. In terms of the team moment, that the team just kind of came together. We were kind of battling in the fourth quarter. We were battling really, really hard to make sure that we didn't lose anymore. We contested very, very hard around the ball, made sure we were in positioning to give ourselves some support and a chance to rebound. We got the ball deep into our defensive side, right, kind of in the pocket, where Joey and Blakey were one-on-one with 2 other North players. Joey marked the ball, passed it over to Blakey, who, instead of running straight down the corridor or looking for that opportunity, ran sideways to switch the ball very quickly, which is something that we've kind of been lacking, to move the ball fast, where you've got yourself a Bell sitting in that left back pocket who is screaming for the ball, and Blakey tells him to start running, and Bell does exactly that, Blakey puts the ball in front of him. A very, very nice kick. This bounces in front of him. Bell taps it in front of him, like at full pitch, really put his body behind it. Head height a guy on the way through. Could have been a penalty, but what are you going to do? Parker, I think from memory, gets possession, hands it over to Bell, who's still kind of running, who's looking towards the corridor, palms it over to Hayward, and we've got ourselves a really beautiful rebound with some hard play, just good positioning of just moving the ball very fast to get ourselves a chance. Hayward, unfortunately, just hammered it forward at an opportunity where he probably just should have held on to it to give ourselves a little bit more space. But again, Heaney is up there working super hard, puts himself in a position to have a go at it. We don't, but it's just a nice movement of the team of being organized defensively. And more importantly, at that time anyway in the game, would be to rebound out straight out of that ball. Yeah. So what about yourself?
Definitely, mate. I'll just say like that. I think that was one of many examples where Bell just showed his effort that game. He was running hard both ways and really backing up. So yeah, I thought that was a good one that you pointed out, mate. For me individually, look, second week in a row now, Ben Ronk's team lifting goal. Mm-hmm. He very nearly got a second where he snapped on his left and hit the post. But obviously the heat. Isaac Heaney, both of his goals, the second one definitely. But apart from that, I thought Ben Ronk is just bobbing up at the right times. Plus, obviously, Juzzy's fourth quarter from heaven, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Otherwise, team-wise, all right, I'm going to read out mine here. About halfway through the fourth quarter, Roos were up by 7 points, pushing hard. Gulden gets a free for high contact in our defensive pocket. We try to handball it out, gets turned over by really good Roos pressure. Joey spoils Goldie, handballs to Simpkin, who snaps high on goal. Rampy knocks it back into the field of play, which is an amazing play in of itself. Cunner's handballs to Joey. Joey does an inaccurate pass to Campbell, but he has a presence of mind to sort of handball it overhead to, I think it was Blakey actually coming through there. He goes long down the wing to a Parker contest. Hayward scraps, handballs inboard again to Parker. Parker to Warner to Mills, and Mills just kicks it into the open space, and Heaney's sprinted 100 meters or something, leaving LDU in his wake. He takes an uncontested mark for a shot on goal, which was Heaney's first goal for the day. So I think that he'd think about that. Like he's been in pretty good nick over the past 3 rounds, especially offensively. But it was the fourth quarter where his first goal came. So he's obviously working very hard. That was his 10th straight goal for the year to that point. It gets us back within 1 point to set up that thrilling finish for the game. So I thought there's a fair bit to that play, but I just thought that was very exciting and filled of, it was a little bit of an emotional roller coaster because I really thought they were going to, Simpkin was going to kick and then they'd be a couple clear, but we bounced back and got back in it, mate, and the rest is history. But
it really was an arm wrestle of a game all the way through. It was, It not only on the scoreboard, we can probably see that from the worm, but just on the field, every movement, every contest, the ball bouncing back and forth between the halfbacks there, it just seemed like it actually was quite an entertaining game. It was kind of one of those games where, as a Swans fan, because we were we were expecting to really do a number on the Roos, but we also knew that they could come out and play, and we could probably play badly. So when watching it the first time around with all the emotions running through me, I've really felt that it was a frustrating game to watch. I felt that we were really poor. We didn't do this, we didn't do that. But then watching it again with less emotion, that the game's been completed and I can kind of look over it and try to just be a bit more diligent and a bit less emotion into every single mark and bounce. It did kind of come across that it was actually a pretty good game of football. It was very contested. It was physical. And the mistakes that were made weren't necessarily made from just poor mistakes. It was pressure mistakes that were made. And so they're the ones you can kind of work with. The ones that really hurt you are the ones that just skill errors, which is something that happened against the Bulldogs that was just very unlike us. So yeah, entertaining game anyway. Even if it was
I agree with
tough.
you, mate. I agree with you. I think that, and I don't know what the exact number was, but like you'd have to say that just from the naked eye test that the majority of our turnovers were pressure forced. They weren't skill based errors, as you're commenting here. I think that just goes to show that Roos played really, really well, and we've said it a couple of times, but it really should be known that I think we weren't lucky to win because we worked hard to get back into it, but it certainly was. I think it was a good game. It was a bit scrappy at times, but I think that really what added to the the emotional element to it. Like every point was worth a lot more. Because it wasn't a hugely high scoring game or anything. But yeah, good, as you said in the very beginning. Good to get the W though. Very good to get the W.
And look, it's a contest across the whole board, isn't it? Like, look at the games that happened this weekend. Everyone thought that Carlton was a no-brainer to win every game for this season.
Yeah.
And the Suns pipped them like convincingly. I know that the Demons were absolutely thrashing the living daylights out of Port Adelaide in probably the worst sight of football that I've seen in a long, long time. But the scoreline, and it was 32 by the end of it, and the Demons, even they struggled to put some pressure on the scoreboard to really shut it down. So I don't know. You're looking at over all the games throughout the week, especially, and the last couple of weeks. It's just it's a good competition. There's a lot of young teams can win it and come out of nowhere. I mean, I think the Demons are definitely still the team to beat across the board, and Carlton will bounce back. But yeah, it's exciting. It's an exciting competition at the moment.
Definitely, mate. And I think what's happened is similar to what happened last year in the first 2-3 rounds. High scoring affair, a lot of free-flowing footy, and then all the coaches have gone, hang on a second, defense wins flags, and now it's the lower scoring games. I certainly think there's more behinds, or there were a lot of behinds in rounds 3 and 4 especially, compared to 1 and 2, not just with us, but absolutely with us as well. So I think it's probably going to, level out at some point. We'll know who the contenders are, and I think that over the next 3 to 4 rounds, we'll know where the Roos sit, and certainly, hopefully, where we sit as well, which is all going well, and fingers crossed, nicely in that middle bracket of the top 8. But we'll have to wait and see. Look, the Roos had everything to play for, didn't they? They got smashed the week before, so they wanted to come out and prove a point, and they very nearly did. So we did well to get the win, but. Anyway, mate, we better crack on to the best and fairest, mate. So up next is the ABOB medal, which is our equivalent of the Bob Skilton medal. The Bevies' best bloods this week in 3-2-1 points order were Juzzy Justin McInerney, Captain Cal Mills, and Isaac the Heat Heaney. How'd you make those guys, mate?
Yeah, I think bang on. I think the McInerney Mills 1-2 punch could have been either way. McInerney just absolutely turned it on that fourth quarter. You'll go through to some of the stats, but look, it's massive to have him back. Like, he really gives so much to the team. Just that energy that he has. He outruns everyone. I don't know what his numbers are. I'd love to see his actual stats for his run, how many times, how many efforts he has, so how many times he's gone on a sprint, how many times he's kind of looking for a bit of space to run. And he's also, whenever he's in position, he's diving his head onto the ball to be like a bit of an inside player. So very, very cool. Look, he got caught a couple of times, being tackled or whatnot, trying to take the game on. But for every time he did that, he did 4 or 5 just incredible plays to kind of get it on the outside and get some space and a nice kick to kind of drive the ball on. His tank is huge for a young kid. So I kind of got that, it's got that really great feeling that I think he's going to be a very good player for quite a long time, because he's really got the fundamentals that do exactly that.
Yeah, mate, it was awesome. He he did play very well throughout the 4 quarters, but just that fourth quarter, he really just sort of took the bull by the horns and said, guys, we're going to win this. He not just him alone, because there were a couple of guys, especially in that fourth, but he just, 14 disposals from his total of 30. He almost had 50% of his touches in the last quarter alone. He was everywhere, had 4 marks, 3 clearances, got that goal that got us in front. there's nothing better than a Juzzy G up. And I'll tell you what, I reckon him, Papley, who else? Ronks. He got the pump up going after the goal. There's a couple of guys who really celebrate, and even Bell, his 2 goals, and after those 2 goals there, he was pumped. So look, it was quite incredible. 2 inside 50s, 3 rebound 50s. So he's working hard in both ends of the ground. Finished with game high clearance of 7. So just everything you've just said, and he's backed it up in stats, and really it was quite incredible to watch, because we're sitting there at the end of the third, and as we said in the beginning, North won the first and the third quarter. At the end of the third quarter, we think, oh man, if we're going to do something here, we're going to get him out in front, because it felt like at that point, if we didn't do something, it was just going to be 2 goals to them, maybe 1 goal to us, and then just keep moving ahead like that. But we really needed to dig hard to get ahead, and Juzzy was a huge part of that. And it was really amazing to watch. It was really, really awesome.
He's the kind of player that when he really gets up and going, the team kind of senses it. I think that's the sensation I get, and I definitely feel it as a fan. So, I don't know. It's exciting to have him back. He was my player for a breakout year this year. So I'm glad to be shown up as being the expert in the field after one game of him playing like a demon. But
nice, mate. You're claiming it.
I'll claim it now. I'm saying it now.
Why not? All right. Next up, we got Mills, who had another really solid game. What'd you make of his game, mate?
Man, he was huge. I think a big part of the defensive efforts that we had, the quality of the rebounds that we had this week were all based on Mills. I think if watching back, he was definitely the extra man to go roll back and playing that more traditional role. Sorry, the role that he grew up playing, which is that halfback role, to kind of come back and give a bit of help out on the wing, coming up center, just trying to find an extra man for them to bounce off. That then let loose a couple of the other players, even like a Campbell, to kind of start rolling on and get the ball a bit more, to get it in deeper into our inside 50. So that was pretty tidy by him. And I think it was a captain's effort. He was everywhere, defensively, offensively, in the middle, out in the wing. Anytime that we needed the extra man to kind of have, make an impact into a contest or be that kind of lead up player, he was the guy to do that. So just a huge, huge game by Mills. I think he's a little unlucky not to get the extra 3 points by the ABOB medal, but just McInerney just turned it on that last quarter to just seal the deal. But yeah, huge game by Millsy.
Yeah, agree, mate. That's really the only difference there. I think from an industrious point of view, Millsy really had it, because he was across the game, 28 disposals at 86%, 7 marks, 4 tackles, 2 goal assists, 8 score involvements, 7 clearances, 6 inside 50s, 3 rebound 50s. So just backing up what you're saying there, going back to help the D and look, he's that link player again, he's, I think by his standards of last year, which was his, by all accounts, breakout year, he has started the year conservatively, let's say. But, I think that this game against the Roos, he showed just, what he's capable of doing, which is, just that silky smooth, consistent player in the middle who, links up our defense to the offense, and was just quite incredible. It was, did he go off at one point? Was that this game or last game?
No, he came off. I think he was pointed to his Achilles again. So because I think third quarter from memory.
Yeah. It looked really bad at one point, didn't it? And he went down and then obviously came back on and finished the game. But I wonder if they just put a little bit of magic juice. Yeah, a little bit of Tanker Rub, bit of Tiger Balm. But so fingers crossed everything's good there. Obviously, that was an injury that he brought into this season. They monitored it over the preseason, but hopefully it's all good there. I mean, there's certainly been no report of it, but you just see that sort of stuff. And, to a player like Millsy is so important to the whole setup. He sort of held my breath for a moment there. But should be all good. All right, let's move on to the Heat. Isaac the Heat Heaney. How good was he, mate?
Oh, the Heat is on fire. He is so consistent week in, week out. It's just beautiful to see. We've all touted him to be so high for so long. And I think the AFL agrees that he's got insanely good talent and he's done a good job with it. He's not lacked and slacked at all. He has been elite for a long time, but he's just seemingly just cracked it up another level. found another gear, 7th gear in the old Mazda 6. I don't know how he's done it, but he's just found a way to just be that extra consistency. He just ran a couple of the people marketing him, well, not marketing, but they were tagged up with him, and they were kind of meant to follow him. He just outran them. They couldn't
just
keep
smashed
up.
him. Yeah, they couldn't keep up.
Smashed them, and every time that they touched the ball, he was on them. So he was able to just make sure that his game wasn't impeded too much, and just be able to run a little bit of a muck and just get around and get what he needed out of it. With Buddy out, he kind of went a bit more forward to make sure that he was that extra tall forward. So that kind of, as it turned out, saved us, scoring those 2 goals to kind of ice the game. But the Heat, just that kind of quality of an elite player to be consistent. And that's exactly where we are with the Heat.
He's hot. Absolutely, mate. He's putting it together this year. And look, I don't know if that's the kind of game that would get you a Brownlow vote, but he was certainly he bobbed up when he needed to, didn't he? So Swans high 27 pressure acts, 11 of which were defensive half pressure acts, 11 tackles. So that was also a Swans high, as well as kicking those 2 crucial goals, as you mentioned. We're like, obviously with Buddy going off and Hayden McLean and Reed, contributing as much as they could, which was largely bringing it to ground, and Reed more so in the ruck. We really needed another player to score, and we did have a good spread of goal kickers. I think we had 9 different goal kickers this week, but Heat just really, injected himself into the game when he needed to, and the best players, win your games, and that is really what happened with Isaac. So it was awesome to see, and bloody stoked, mate. Honourable mentions, have you got a couple?
I do, yeah. I've got a very controversial one. I feel I've got a Reed. I feel that Reed.
Okay.
Right, just half the Swans channel just drops off immediately.
I think everyone was pleasantly surprised, and you'd be interesting to see if there are going to be as many people as we think should be eating their hat. But anyway, over to you, mate.
Yeah, look, you're right. I think, and I was one of them. I think when they made the call, we were thinking the ground's going to be wet. We're going to go extra tall. We're like, what is this option? Like, I don't think even us optimistic Swans fans like me, or fans that try to take emotion out of their minds and try to just look at the game, and even us, we were just like, what is this decision? Like, this is, I'm trying to work it out. But as it turns out, it ended up being a pretty good one. I think Laddams had to sit off a little while, so Ree kind of jumped in to take the ruck there. They kind of took a bit of turn. He definitely had some really good impact early on in the forward line there, jumping up for some marks. Him and Buddy kind of got in each other's way a little bit, a couple of those contests where we had 2 of them going up. You got to, like, Buddy, remember, you're not the guy that takes the overhead marks. That's the Reed bloke. That's never been your game, buddy. Like, stick around the ball, but maybe don't go up to take that mark. But it's very happy with the way he played. It's good to have back. Will he stay in the team or not? I think that's a question to be had. I think he's the kind of player where, depending on the scenario, you bring him in. But look, the Reed from the first few games last year was unbelievable. Was a big part of our wins there. The first game that we see Reed back this year, again, really good, really happy to see. Look, let's see if he keeps his spot mostly. One
goal two could have been, should have been probably 2 goals to that air swing is, I think, one he'll want back. But I mean, let's face it, if Isaac Heaney also does an air swing in the same play, then chances are everyone else's goals are going to air swing it. But fair call, mate. I agree with you. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do with the selections. We'll chat about that a bit later on. But Reedy did well. I was pleasantly surprised.
Mm-hmm. And then look, the other one
he dropped a couple of marks, but it was a little bit greasy. It was a little bit wet, and there were, as we were saying, there were mistakes or aplenty from both sides. So you can't single the bloke out, I think. But
he was kind of like one stuck mark in front of goal that he had 2 opportunities to. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a serious contest, but stick one of those, score that extra goal, I think he would have just shut up absolutely everyone.
Oh, definitely.
But hey, it is what it is. It's football. It was a tough day out there either way. So anyway, the other one was Blakey, the one that I wanted to call out. I think a lot of Swans fans would be like, no doubt, How did he not get top 3? But is very competitive in this top 3 for the bloody A-Bob medal.
That's it, mate.
Yeah, he did good. I think they did a good job of shutting him down. They really were on top of him. From the very get-go, he didn't get too much space. And so he kind of, instead of running straight down, he started running sideways and started to find himself a bit more space, started looking for the person on the outside. So he changed his game up a little bit, which ended up giving him still loads of impact, but not necessarily being the guy to just run down the center every single time. He had those moments, don't get me wrong. One where he like buggered up a kick, but he's there to have that opportunity, and it didn't work out every single time. But when it did work out, it's like a massive injection into speed and positioning and territory in the game. So yeah, Blakey, man, loving what his game is all about, and seeing him mature, and also seeing him do a good job under pressure with defenders looking at him, making sure that he doesn't get too much ball. It's been really good.
I think one thing to say here, I think he actually had a very a consistent game. Like he played against the Roos as he had been playing in the first 3 rounds, which was of a very high level. I think what stood out to me is that I think that the Roos deployed a tag. Basically, I think Kane Turner was sticking to him, and I think that they, to a degree, nullified him. But he still played really well. He did all the things you're talking about, which was, get that injection off the half-back line. And I just think he was a little bit, held back by that tag. But that just goes to show, the comp, I think, are starting to respect the Lizard, because, if you don't respect him and look after him, he's just going to run amok, slithering off the half-back line there. So, plus his dad probably wanted to get one up over him and said, let's put a hard tag on the Lizard. But good call, mate. I think he's definitely an honourable mention for sure. Mm-hmm. Mate, I've got 2. I've got Braden Campbell and Ollie Florent. So I'll start with Campbell. 21 disposals, 16 of which were kicks, 75% accuracy. So look, I think that's pretty decent when your majority of your disposals are kicks. But 9 intercepts, 5 marks, 5 tackles. I think Goulden had a quiet game this round against the Roos, or even potentially last week as well. But I think Campbell's really starting to find his own, come into his own, and I'd say both offensively, like that kick, that penetrating kick, is just a work of art. And defensively, how many times do we see him come over the top and spoil? For basically a small defender or medium defender, he's really coming along, and it's great to see that. His confidence levels are rising. But in terms of Ollie Oflo, 23 disposals, 5 tackles, 4 marks, 10 inside 50s, 5 score involvements. Look, along with Juzzy, he was a massive reason that we got back ahead. How many times do we see him run and dash, hit a hole and then get it inside 10 inside 50s, right? So he was a massive part of that rebound and eventual victory. Look, that running too far kick call, I think that was line ball. I mean, we see that every single game, every single round. I think that was a good example of over officious adjudication, like the umpires being a little bit whistle happy. But look, if Ollie Florent had kicked a goal, he might have squeezed Heaney out of the top 3. I think that's the kind of game he had. It was reminiscent of that first round game against the Giants, minus those goals.
Yeah, so he's the kind of player that he's going to do something. He has to do something like really out there, right? He's got to, because he finds himself space. He runs into space. He gets the ball and he puts it down the middle. Like he had 10 inside 50s. That's crazy, right? Huge. Yeah. And I think the first game we saw a couple spots from him of like just kicking these absolutely insane goals in order to get everyone's attention. He's not going to do that every week, but a game like today, the game from Saturday was massive. That's the kind of Ollie Florent that is like that A-grade player that we should see week in, week out. We have that consistency from him. Like that's just terrible. That's just terrible for the competition to have to deal with him as well as everyone else. You drop him, you got Warner to deal with. You jump onto Warner, you got McInerney to deal with. Like we've got this prong that
Rowie as well.
Rowie
well in the midfield as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Warner's actually one we probably could easily have spoken about in the honourable mentions for sure. Like he had a great game as well.
Yeah, he's had a tough one to miss out. On Campbell front, he loves to get down and dirty. I noticed he loves to really get his head into the game, put a hard tackle and get tackled. He loves it. He revels in it. So Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing him kind of do some things. And he was really playing a huge part in being the extra option and coming out of our defensive line to really do something with the ball, to try to do something kind of creative to get the ball moving. He was a big part of that early on. So seemed to settle down the nerves, and we had a good strategy from the back there, good tactics. So yeah, looking forward to having him really do a whole lot. So he's got a high ceiling, that old Campbell.
Yep, definitely. And just for reference, coaches' votes, they saw Juzzy as getting 10, Zeeble 8. Zeeble obviously had an amazing game, 5 goals. Jai Simpkin, who had a really good game as well for the Roos in the middle there, he got 5. Mills on 3, Ollie Florin on 3, and our Jake Lloyd on 1. So, yeah, not too far off the mark there, I think, for the ABOB medal. All right, mate, hot topics. How do we pull up after the match? Any MRL, any MRO? What changes will we make? And how are our VFL players looking? So, obviously, from the top, Buddy's finger requires surgery, confirmed, probably going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks. So, massive loss, obviously, because he was in good touch as well. He'd taken a few uncontested marks, which was uncommon for Buddy, but kicked the 2 goals. It looked like it was one of those days he could probably kick 3 or 4, but Ronk comes on and gets the goal, and actually he's the one that sort of got us, pushed us forward. So I think some people are saying it was a bit strategic medical change, but I mean, it's been confirmed that he is obviously broken or dislocated it, so it's bad enough to warrant that. It's definitely bad enough to sit out the rest of the game. But all right, Reed, Logan, or Amadi Party, who comes in for Buddy? Oh, sorry. Reed is obviously still in there. Does Reed hold his spot? Is the question, I guess.
Look, it all goes. How do we go with this? We're playing West
Eagles,
Coast, right?
Yeah,
Eagles.
West Coast in Perth.
They're probably the best backline in the form of like being able to find a good contest and get you away from it. So I don't know. Do you have Logan to kind of step in? Like he's just going to be out-muscled and by a few of those fellas there.
He's doing everything he can to get back in. Obviously, he didn't like getting dropped because in the past 2 rounds of the VFL, in round 2 he kicked 4 goals, took 8 marks, 17 disposals. In the last game against Port Melbourne, which we won, he got 3 goals, 4 behind. So he's having a lot of shots on goal, 11 marks, 10 of which were contested. So he is doing everything he can. And I mean, not that Joel isn't though. He also kicked 4 goals, 2 behind, 6 marks. So I don't know. Do they both come back in? I think they're probably too young. You can't probably throw 2 young guys in there, but it's going to be interesting how they go. The other thing is, I will just say it here, Paddy McCartan obviously had that big collision with Zerha and didn't go off initially, but then was asked to go off and got assessed as part of the concussion protocols and was obviously cleared and came back on and finished the game. But was captured by the broadcast. Looked like he had some tears in his eyes after the match. So that was sort of a bit hard to read, I think. So there hasn't been any news of him potentially missing out next week. But I would say if it comes out that Paddy is going to have a week off just as precaution, then maybe Reed goes down back.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair one. I think that's the way to go there. Reed, I think just being that swing man can do a bit of everything. I mean, Paddy has been playing that kind of, I think, taking the second most dangerous tall. So is that Reed's game? Nah, not really. But he definitely has been in the past, been in that position and being able to do it. Look, on the Paddy front, he took 2 really big knocks. I think one was in the end of the first, maybe in the second, where he went into a big contest, hit the ground pretty hard. It looked like he was shaken up. And then that big one against Zerha, where they both went into the ball really, really hard. Both did the right thing by turning their heads but just collided really hard. Like you said, he was cleared, but every Swans fan saw him in tears afterwards. So we're all really feeling maybe his emotion. Maybe he just kind of, flew behind the sun and just kind of scared himself a little bit to be like, bit of PTSD or remembering the how hard it is to kind of get back into the game when that's happened to himself. So maybe it's just like high on emotions, and I hope that he just is all cleared up and he's fine.
Fingers crossed, yeah, totally. And I know we've all been blown away with how well he's played and how well he's gelling with his brother down back. And obviously, I think we all wish him the best either way. So anyway, it should be good. Obviously, Papley is still another week away, at least. Bell was a late replacement for Wicks, who was out with COVID health and safety protocols. So, yeah, I mean, you kicked off the podcast with, the small forward competition. And I think that was an accurate comment because, Bell came in. He was the one selected. It was Bell over Ronk. Ronk came on for Buddy, as we've mentioned. Mm-hmm. So Bell's obviously next in line. And Bell, I think, did everything that he could have done to hold his spot. 2 crucial goals, a lot of, forward 50 pressure. I think he was tasked with sticking on Aaron Hall, who's really their main ball user, and by his standards, he had a pretty quiet game because he normally racks it up and just gets ridiculous scores in fantasy. But Bell did pretty well there to keep him fairly modest. So, is Wicks back in? Does Bell get dropped? It's a tough one, I think. Yeah,
that's a really tough one because I think Bell, not only did Bell play that forward pressure role really well and score a couple while he was at it, he also was a fantastic link-up man, a support player down the wing for a couple of moments there where he noticed that the team needed an extra person to just that extra out. Made sure he got his distance, got out to the ball, and then just ran like buggery back to the forward line to put some pressure down on those defenders. So he was quite good. He was everywhere. I don't know what his tank's better, whatever it is. He played very, very well. I personally would like to see him hold that spot for another week. I think that there's no reason why he shouldn't keep it. It's a bit sad for Weeks to sit it out because of something out of his control. He's not been playing badly. I think we said last week that maybe he could do with a sit out in the VFL, but not because he's had bad form, just because, he had a couple of bad moments there. Maybe it just makes some sense for him to have a bit of a break. But Bell looked great. He looked AFL level. He looked like a perfect support player for us. And I don't see why he shouldn't stay.
Yeah, it's an awesome problem to have because if you think about that golden run from the Tigers, they had, when one of their main players went off, they had someone who was basically just as good. So, it's really good to see like Bell and Ronk, doing everything they can to hold their spot because it just increases, in competition and that can only mean, it's obviously, ultimately disappointing for the individual player, but a really good thing for the club. So it's going to be interesting to see which way they go. I think Steve-O, we were chatting in the group tonight saying that it'd be tricky to judge Bell harshly against, Ronk, who comes on for effectively a quarter and a half. He's obviously going to have more in the tank than someone who's played, already a half of footy. So, I mean, that's not to take anything away from Ronk. I think he's had 2 weeks in a row now. He's come on and really given us an injection of, freshness, urgency, really good pressure. Not to mention that the goals. So, yeah, look, good problem to have. We'll save it for the Brains Trust, but let's move on to Laddams now, mate. So you touched on him earlier. So obviously he was our prized recruit in the off season. He's our long-term ruck. I think it was Jules throwing her under the bus here. I think we all agreed that it looked like maybe Laddams could do with, obviously he had an interrupted preseason, so it seemed like he was a bit sluggish out there. Obviously, he was up against 2 very good, ruckmen in their own right. Goldie's been top of the league for a decade now, and Sherry is clearly an up and comer who's going to be a very good ruckman for them for a while. So he had a hard day out because he was up against 2 rucks with the help of Reed. So I think it was Brady who asked the question, what were his numbers in terms of in the ruck. And we looked it up. It was 71 ruck contests he attended. He had 27 hitouts, 9 to advantage. And all those 3 numbers were clear winners by anyone who played any ruck contests in the game. For reference, Goldie had 58, 23, and 4. Sherry had 32, 13 and 3, and our own Reedy had 19, 6 and 1 respectively. So, in terms of a ruck game, he did all right. He had like 5 clangers. No, it was 7 clangers and gave away 5 free kicks. So I think you could probably put that down to just, debut, nerves, maybe a little bit underdone. I'm certainly not wanting to drop him at all. I think we should just keep rolling with him, especially in the absence of Hickey, who obviously we're seeing is like really another midfielder for us, just the way that Hickey could get his own ball and clear it. Laddams is a different type of player, but I still think that, he gets picked, right? You say it like that.
Look, if you're going to throw Jules under the bus, let's do it properly. Sorry, Jules.
You're going to quote her, eh?
Sorry,
it was funny. I tried to backpedal, mate, but now you're really throwing her under the.
Sorry, Jules, I'm throwing you right under there because I kind of quietly agree with you. That's why. Laddams looked like he spent the off season trying out all the pubs in Surrey Hills rather than being on the track. Now that's
that's how you throw someone under the bus.
That's a bus throw if I've ever seen one. But she's obviously having a bit of fun, and we all are. But he definitely looked gassed. But look at those numbers. Like if he beat out Goldie in the ruck, he was the main ruckman for us the entire game. He sat a little off where he got hit pretty hard in the head by Goldie in that contest, had a little bit of time off and then came back on. But 71 ruck contests to win 27 of them and 9 to advantage, like that's really good numbers. Like he's obviously very, very talented. He's got a very talented mentor in Hickey and Dean Cox. Around him. So he's just I'm quite excited. I'm very high on him. I think so. Please don't take this the wrong way, Swans fans, when I say the following. He might not shine massively this year, and he also may be a bit underdone, which by looking at those numbers, for me to say he's underdone for what I saw at the game, I think that's quite promising. I think what we're going to see from him is really, really big things. So I'm all for it. I'm well for him. Whether he sticks around for next week, if he has the tank to do so, whether he pulls up well, I'm in. That's fine. But it definitely seems like he needs some support. It definitely seems like an Amati definitely needs to be hanging out forward. And then like we were talking at the beginning about who has a rest for Buddy. Do you throw Amati up forward and they kind of rest each other to make sure they both have the tank? Because they both got talent, but from what I've seen so far, their tanks are quite a bit low. So we're not quite there yet.
What Amati can do over Logan is that he can be that other ruck option. So obviously we're kind of blessed for talls, as we say every week. Reed obviously he was the chop out this week. Hayden McLean can do it probably, I think, better than Reed. But he was, once Buddy went off, he was that key tall target. But I think that Amati is actually a better second ruck option than both Reed and Hayden. So that game against the Eagles last year, when he had a few ruck contests against Nick Nat, I thought was a really good trial, and I was looking forward to it. But I think we read tonight that Nick Nat, he's done his medial, so similar to what Hickey did. So he's going to be out for probably until after the bye. So I mean, that's a bit of a blessing in disguise. I feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that Laddams might only have someone like Reed or McLean to back him up. If I think it's Bailey Williams who's touted to step in for Nick Nat, and they've got another younger tall who Hugh Dixon, I think it is going to back up there. But yeah, it's going to be, I think, just roll with him, persist, see how he goes, because I don't think he's really shown half of what he can. Like I followed him pretty closely when he was at Port, and he is really like another midfielder. He might not have the clearance game like Hickey, but he does have a really nice left kick, and I think he's going to link up well with our young mids. In terms of the Eagles as well, it sounds like Kelly, Shuey, and Yo are all due back, possibly even Cripps and Allen. So that's some serious firepower to be coming back in. So it's certainly not going to be easy. The only silver lining, I think, is that the Eagles beat Collingwood when they weren't meant to. So I was thinking, we're facing the Roos, who got beaten by 100. Next week we might be facing the Eagles, who had come off 2 losses. So we're going to be up against it. But now that they've won, they've got a little bit of swagger about them. Got that back. They got all these players coming back in. So it's certainly not going to be an easy game, and we're obviously playing away. But Teams Thursday night. It's going to be interesting to see which way we go, because the old adage is if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Okay, over to you. I'm going to ask you a question. Sinclair or Laddams for this week?
Sinclair. Sorry, Laddams for sure.
Laddams straight away.
Yeah.
Sinclair for Amati. Does Sinclair make his way back into the team outside of injury?
Oh, for the rest of the season? Potentially not, but it does depend on how he's playing. Obviously he had a pretty dominant display against Port Melbourne. He had 40 hitouts and 16 disposals himself. But yeah, look, I don't know. It's I know some people are saying throw him back in there because he's from we got him from the Eagles and a little bit of that sort of reverse psychology or whatever. But yeah, I can't see him getting in there over the log jam of tours that we have and the roles that we've got all these guys playing.
One thing that Sinclair does have for certain is effort and tank.
Absolutely,
So
that's true.
Talent, questionable. Not in a bad way. I'm not saying that's in a bad way. I'm just saying that maybe he's not as polished as some of the other players, but his effort and his ability to contest and his effort to get around the ground is high. So that's really a massive game of his. That's his huge piece that he has. So yeah, look, I agree with you. I think Laddams back it in. Let's see how he goes. Amati as well.
I'll just say on Sinclair there, mate. I always thought that we were playing him out of position. Like I always thought that he was a key positional player who could, do very well in the ruck, not a ruck who should swing forward or back, if you know what I mean. So I thought he'd be a really good key forward. And in fact, I remember, and you would too, games where he's kicked 3, 4, 5 goals as a forward. I always thought that if we're looking, this is before we took on Paddy this year, and they were saying Reed's going to roll around again and as that swingman, but the Pies of Darcy Moore and Roughhead, they're both 200 centimeter plus key fullbacks. So I always thought that Sinclair could have been played primarily out of key D or key forward, but credit to himself, he's obviously an athlete and he's hanging around. He's a real good clubman as well. So shout out to Conversations with Cal,
I love
podcaster extraordinaire.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him. I love him as a person, as a player. I think his kicking kind of let him down. He had a lot of opportunities at the forwards there, and he just didn't nail it. And maybe McLean's just been a little bit more sharp in that spot. So, yeah. But hey, look, just good to have him in the club as an option. If he does step in, as you said, if we do kind of roll him in to kind of go to the West and give a bit of that psychology back to him, then I'm all for it. I'll be okay with that. So.
Hey, I think it'd be fine in either way. But yeah, there's other options there to consider probably. But hey, mate, do you have any other news?
I do. I've got some AFLW news that I'm quite excited to announce. We've on the quiet, apart from congratulations to Adelaide for their third premiership in the 5 years the competition's been around. So huge dynasty at the moment at the early onset of the AFLW. So yeah, look, the commentary around that is that they probably won't do it again, and because the team's going to be split up for spreading around for the expansion of the competition. So yeah, congratulations Adelaide for that. So but also on the Sydney Swans front, the AFLW, we've got ourselves a few players, including a couple of players from the Giants.
Nice.
Over to Sydney, just like Steve-O mentioned it would happen. So Steve-O did say this is going to happen because of the way that the game goes. You need someone to be from their local area because they're not, full-time players yet. They're still amateur. So you're going to need someone. You can't, move someone from WA over to here and have to find them a new job and house and everything like that. It doesn't quite work that way. So you are looking at the talents around your local area. So we've got ourselves Ali Morfitt, ruckman from the Giants, ruckwoman from the Giants to come in, which is pretty exciting. It's her first year over there. Apparently she did pretty well. And we've also got a few other players that have come in tomorrow. We signed 6 more players from the Kangaroos. We've also got from Hawthorn a trio, Sigeti, Whelan and Barutson. So yeah, look, it's all starting to come together for the AFLW Swans, which is very, very exciting for me personally. I think I'm really looking forward to seeing that. So AFLW, Sydney Swans, it's exciting times. If you haven't already, make sure you get your foundation membership. Make sure you follow them on all the Twitters and Instagrams and everything, because as well as the men's game kind of going off right now, it's off season for AFLW, and that still has its exciting time. So just get around it.
Definitely, mate. I'll just I'll add to that two things. The first being that grand final against the D's, that was brutal. Like that I think. I mean, obviously when the umpires umpire a grand final, it's typically a more of a free flowing affair. They're more reluctant to blow the whistle, but that was in stark contrast to our game that had 60 free kicks. I thought that the AFLW grand final was a much better officiated example of Aussie rules footy, and these women were just absolutely launching themselves into every contest. It was basically a bloodbath. It was quite incredible to watch. Just the level of skill and bravery from the ladies was really amazing. The other thing is, I'll say, getting very excited about the list coming together, and I think we'll probably, this is just a bit of an idea, but we'll probably do an overview once the list is formalised, and we'll either get Steve-O or Jules on to talk us through that. So that'll be something we'll look forward to doing on the potty going forward. Very quickly, I just wanted to add the game against Port Melbourne. That was the last time we played Port Melbourne, so that would have been South Melbourne, was 126 years ago.
Wow.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that. I forgot to say that when we were talking about it, but isn't that incredible?
That's wild. I love it.
That's a fair. It's a long time between drinks, mate.
Mm-hmm.
126 years ago. Anyway, it's good to get the win, obviously. But AFLW, and I think by all accounts, the Hall of Industries is really coming along as well. So that's going to be amazing when both the men's and women's teams, also the academy programs, are going to be fully functional out of that base. I'm just looking forward to getting over there at some point, checking it out. But all right, mate, I think that gets us to one last thing. So obviously, as we mentioned, West Coast Eagles next week at Optus in Perth. Early thoughts, tips, best, worst memory against the Eagles?
I don't want to give any tips. I just haven't been great the last couple of weeks. I just look. I think it's what Nick Nat being out is obviously a big out for them.
Yeah.
But then, as you mentioned, Kelly, Shuhiro, all back. Like, my goodness, like
triple threat.
Triple threat, huge players. Potentially Cripps Allen, that's massive. So I think we've got a big game set up for us ahead over there in the West. So look, I just hope that the boys kind of back up the momentum that they dragged on from this game. Significantly better than round 3. Round 4 was quite decent. Let's see how we go.
Okay, mate.
I did want to touch on something though. Remember when we interviewed Ty Connelly? And
yes.
For listeners out there that weren't around yet, we have, and I'll re-release it maybe this week or so.
He's a legend, such a champ.
We expected to talk to him for 20 minutes, but as he said himself, he can talk the leg off a piano. So he just went at it. We spoke for about a good hour or something like that. He just loves it. He just loves talking about football and just a genuinely nice guy. Yep. But he did make it really clear and a bit of inside knowledge that that famous Leo Barry mark. Okay, so
Leo Barry
U star. He made sure that Sampi didn't get a run at it from West Coast. Not only did he block him, he also said that he was holding hands in the back. He did at least 3 or 4 different types of penalties to make sure that Sampi didn't get a run at it. So that's a bit of inside knowledge only known to the Bevy of Bloods crew, that there was at least 3 penalties in that moment that just never were called. So put away the whistles, umpires. It's a better game for it.
Chriso, that's how you retrospectively throw someone under a bus. Now, look, hey, the history is written. And look, I'll just add, I was visiting London for the 05 Grand Finals, watching on in a pub with my brother Nugget, sipping on breakfast pints, and it was bloody awesome. So that's my best memory. I think most Swans' best memory against the Eagles would have been that one. Obviously not Dean Cox, but he got us the following year. So amazing to have him in the club anyway. But look, it's going to be hard. But yeah, hopefully we can string it together and we're building resilience. So that's also a good thing. All right, mate. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. So on behalf of the Bevy, I'd like to say thank you very much to everyone for listening in. Tune in again on Thursday night for our team announcement video and preview post. Apologies, I didn't do the Roos one this week, but I'll get on track for the Eagles one. Otherwise, make sure to keep following us on Instagram and Facebook at A Bevy of Bloods for updates and announcements. Until then, up the Bloods and can you
Swannies!